Hi, everyone. Welcome to the CodeStrap podcast. My name is Connor Deeks, CEO of CodeStrap, and I'm joined, as always, with the original CodeStrap himself and CTO Dorian Smiley. We're going to be bringing you guys the latest and greatest around Palantir, the tech, the company, the community. We'll also be discussing insights on other companies, things happening in the world of AI, of consulting, of investing, and any meaningful topic that requires attention. The focus of today's episode is the growth of the Palantir developer pool. We'll discuss the mechanisms for building the global base of Foundry native devs, the potential to bring in different personas, and why Marketplace may be the great unlock for Palantir growth. We're joined today by Taylor Gregoire-Wright, founder and CEO of Ontologize. Ontologize is the only official Palantir partner that offers live instructor-led training, and they are CodeStrap's exclusive training partner. Taylor, welcome to Code and Connor.
Thanks, Connor. It's great to be here with you guys.
Welcome.
First topic on the docket is the state of Palantir trained capacity. We can discuss where we're seeing the fastest growth, whether that's in commercial Palantir customers, consultancies, government, or even startups that are built atop Foundry.
In short, like everywhere, everyone is investing in capacity. More interesting than like who's growing the fastest, I think, is the different flavors we're seeing here. So in commercial, like imagine your typical Fortune 500 company or even smaller. Maybe the Palantir team was there. Maybe it was, just the software license. They'll have their technical team. Maybe it's IT or data engineering. It's a pretty diverse source for that first technical talent on the platform. They'll want to train them so they can do two things, like administer the platform, set it up, govern it, and then build on it, of course. And in the wake of that, they want to enable their super users, citizen developers, folks who are going to use the no-code stuff. So pipeline builder with AIP, building the ontology, building workflow applications, AI functions, things like that. That's commercial. And, like where you get to 10,000 users or more, they're mostly using end user facing applications and, which is pretty cool, I think, compared to other platforms, and finding data in a self-serve way, making some basic AIP functionality. Really, it's like we kind of poo-poo Excel, but Excel is like a great programming environment. If you don't, I know that you're actually programming, and Foundry's like that more so with AIP for the AI stuff today, but it's all in one place, right? And it's like not federated out on your desktop. So that flavor is really getting a lot of traction. And then multinational systems integrators, consultancies, I think there's been a lot of latent demand there. And now that there's a customer base to really build large scale business practices there, they're investing in their delivery and horizontal capabilities, pretty large scales. US government, of course, both civil and DoD. And then on the smaller side, just like everyone coming out of the woodwork. It's like it's a startup with some super technical team, or it's a startup with like no technical talent, right? And they're using this because it has all the no code stuff in it. Or whatever mid-market stuff, right? So we run giant trainings that are very long-standing relationships, and then someone will come to us with just some training that they only got 5 people, and they're a brand new Foundry for startup or Palantir for startups customer or what have you.
In the context of commercial, one of the things we see when customers are most excited about enablement and they're going to train a larger group of people to come in, and it's usually, I think, you described it right. Like it's kind of after they've done their initial pilot phase and they've maybe got some use cases out the door and they start thinking about enablement. The ones that are most passionate about it tend to be adopting decentralized models, especially for like data products and ontology management. So like a lot of these forward-thinking orgs have said, a centralized MDM just didn't really work for us. We need a better way to scale the number of data assets like producers and consumers. And as such, we need a large enablement program. Are you seeing like a correlation there, like in terms of customers taking decentralized approaches that are scaling through enablement faster? Are you seeing customers who are trying to scale the capacity scaling around distributed models or like centralized models more?
We're seeing a pretty wide range, actually. Now, obviously, the entire platform biases you more toward a federated model because
Right.
There's so many self-serve tools. One of the things that I think is pretty, like you and I don't even think about it, but the fact that this one piece of software has full stack developers and data engineers and machine learning, like data scientists, and some random person in finance who happened to stumble into it and can like learn the no code stuff as well. Like you don't have that person building on AWS directly. You don't have these other people like, creating some new workflow in Workday to manage HR stuff. But like, everyone is together, right? So it's going to bias you toward more federated because just more people can access it. A couple things that come into consideration. One is just culture. Some organizations are more centralized, so they're going to be further on the scale. Some are more federated. Regulatory environment, right? If you just have to impose and take greater advantage of the security capabilities, you're going to be a bit more centralized. Another one is like cost concerns. So for a lot of customers, you don't really have to think too hard in a proactive way. But if you're going to like have a lot of live streaming inference ML models available to a lot of people, maybe you want to have a bit more control over who's able to like use those resources. So that's really a function of the nature of your data and ontology as well as use cases. Some people are just like intrinsically less costly for their deployments and some are more. So you see it that way. But we say to people like, hey, Palantir is instinctively going to go maximally federated. They want to enable the end users. They want to enable everyone to build on the platform. That's just the spirit of how they achieve what they achieve. I don't think I name any publicly, but in private conversation, you can say, oh, okay, like this customer who has a public relation with Palantir, like this is how they sort of do things, and you get a bit of a menu. What you want to do, whoever we're talking to, is like you want to triangulate our opinion, Palantir's opinion, others to a good match for you. And we tell them it's like, hey, there's actually a 12-month journey. You don't have to do a lot of like work at any given moment. But here's what you want to do in the beginning, in the middle, and the end. And as you build use cases, you will observe what is actually best for your organization. It's like, oh, you don't actually have to have some like production grade process for managing who can spin up a project today. Like, unless you're doing super sensitive data already from the get-go, it's like, accept the fact there's going to be a little bit of messiness, a little bit of chaos. You've got ample tools to bring that down over time. And we try to prime people with the notion there's this oscillations. Like you're going to have people build things that's like it's blooming and there's going to be some things that don't pan out. And then when you realize, hey, what's worth incremental investment, you're going to collapse the complexity back down to something more manageable. And you're just going to grow like this over time. And it's really just like showing them that the tools are there to figure out what is best for them. That gets people on a good path.
So you mentioned a 12-month journey to really owning the stack maybe and getting deep enough such that you understand maybe all of the components of Foundry and AIP. In that life cycle, where do you see like the biggest bang for the buck early on for the business cohort versus and like which tools versus like the more full stack developer-esque type of resources?
And so maybe one clarification first. The reason I began saying like the 12-month thing in the context of platform administration is because the tendency is for people to try to like front load a lot of that stuff, and that gets in the way of delivering business outcomes faster. Additionally, it's just more work up front, and you're likely to get something wrong because you just haven't spent time with the platform for a little while. And so it's like, hey, here's the short list of the things you should do in the beginning to make sure the data is going to be secure, but you're not going to gum up the works too much. And then you can just defer some of the platform admin work a little ways, and that lets more people do more useful things there. That's different than like getting your data in and building your ontology and like figuring out what use cases you want and what AI agents or functions you want to make. Totally separate tracks here. But I think on the last one, we start by, even if it's a technical cohort, we start by teaching Pipeline Builder for data engineering because it is a really useful way of learning the concepts of, okay, like this is kind of similar to what I'm familiar with. Maybe I'm used to ClickHouse or Databricks or Snowflake, but like what's different here? That helps us illuminate it pretty easily. And then, we can fall back into code. But this also tracks like a user who's maybe not quite comfortable with code, even with LLM augmentation. They can use Pipeline Builder, and when they graduate up to code, well, then it's there for them as well. And from a speed to value thing, that's probably the place to start today, just because you can build a pipeline really fast. If you need to refactor it, no problem. By the way, there's like the convert to Java thing, but like the best thing I found is like you in Pipeline Builder toggle on the pseudocode view. So for a path, take a screenshot of that thing, put it into your chatbot of choice, and that is going to generate really good Polars or PySpark code because it's like sufficiently well structured. It's like a quasi DSL, and that's the quickest way to convert it to code, actually. But yeah, and that's true for the application stuff, like Workshop versus the OSDK, or AIP logic versus your Python or TypeScript functions with LLMs of your choice in there. It's kind of like this two-track thing. And just one more example, like devs ask me, like, hey, how do you know when to write code for an action or something like that? I'm like, your basic CRUD actions, you get them out of the box, you make your object type, start with those. But for me, as soon as I have one action that's powered by a function, I'll pause and refactor all of them to be all in code so that I have one central, or maybe if it's sufficiently complicated, maybe a couple, but typically one repo for that object type or that workflow. And it's like, it's all right there. And so that's kind of my trigger. It's like, you want to think about complexity, not necessarily using the tool you're most accustomed to outside the platform. Just go with what's faster here, and then you can refactor pretty easily later.
What's interesting there is you're kind of touching on the full stack nature of the full stack Foundry developers who can take advantage of the code forward parts of the platform, the non-code forward parts of the platform like Pipeline Builder and Workshop. One of the things that I want to get your take on is like, how do you, when you're dealing with a customer who's got a lot of people who are not trained, the initial condition is you have a group that's done some use cases, maybe they're 12 months, 24 months into the journey, they've had some success, but they want to open the aperture up, and you have a large pool of people who are not trained, and you got to figure out like, how do I continue the momentum and focus the resources I have, and then leverage the pieces of this that I've got. So like I might have some people who are good in data engineering, maybe like there's one of those, and like maybe there's 2 or 3 that are good in Python and they can work in functions,
Yeah.
and but then there's 15 or 20 that will fit that citizen engineering profile, SME. Do you ever sit down with them and figure out the best path for each of those personas for training? And like, how do you get them to a point where they can contribute like max value as fast as possible, and then put them on a longer full stack learning journey for like through proper certification? Or do you advocate for like, no, we're going to put those people on certification paths now, and they'll just get incrementally better as they, make progress towards their cert? Like, how do you think about maximizing those resources?
I think there's like 2 things sometimes. One is just how we run training, but then just tactical advice for anyone who's listening, who's in that situation. I think first, we take the approach that like, training should be customized by default. So we have good, no regrets curriculums for your technical users, non-technical users, solution architects, whatever. But it's like, what is your team on the hook to deliver in the next 3 to 6 months that is outcome oriented over a reasonably short time frame, that they're not going to forget something, or they're not going to not have the opportunity to apply it? And then what are the skills today? Simple questionnaire we send out, and we'll take a lesson out, we'll put a module in, we'll adapt the duration of the training so it's like maximally valuable for the short term outcome they need to deliver. But it gets you a lot of things. It's a much more engaging training. It's just more fun for people. It's more relevant to their day-to-day job. It's better value for the money and time you're investing in it. And we're not teaching things people are going to forget. Now, because, as teachers, we enjoy having people who want to be there, right? So it's better all around. And it's like, if you want whatever niche advanced topic down the road, cool, just come back to us, no problem. So make it adapted, make it outcome focused. And you want like the most efficient training. You actually want the least amount of time to get the foundation so you can learn on your own. That's our approach. Granted, there's a lot there, but like you don't want to go in and say, we want to learn everything. No. It's not going to be good for anyone. Very tactically, if you have those users, the biggest bang for your buck is custom homepages with Workshop. It takes about 10 minutes to make. In Control Manager, you can configure them. I know this isn't training directly, but like the biggest stumbling block, if you imagine this as a funnel, the biggest fall off will be like navigating the platform and finding the stuff you want to find. People are just, if they're used to browsing things, they're going to struggle with Foundry's search first interface. And so like, it takes you 10 minutes to make a custom homepage and assign it to this user group or that user group to give them the object types they want, give them some example stuff just right there. That's the best. 2, lunch and learns. Those are a classic, tried and true. And you'll get people joining in, just record it, put it on SharePoint or wherever you host your internal videos. That's pretty solid as well. We put a lot of YouTube videos up. You can follow those. we're launching our self-serve learn portal soon, so we'll have downloadable data for all those. But in the meantime, just email us if you want some of the data and you want to follow one of those with your own internal groups. And then in control panel, for the less technical people, limit their app access. It's like, consider not even giving them code repositories or Vertex or machinery in the beginning. It's like, you got Pipeline Builder, Ontology Manager, Workshop, AIP Logic, Contour, maybe Quiver, maybe the map, right? And it's like, cool. And on the homepage, have a big honking button like, I want code, or something to that effect. So you get like, raise their hand. But in the meantime, again, they're not going to use the wrong thing. They are going to be in a real, the bumpers, the bowling alley, you're pulling them up for them. And so it's all about, get them learning material, get them training, but like, get the other stuff out of their way so they have a more limited experience and they can just like focus on delivering outcomes with a more limited set of tools, and it's just less intimidating.
And it's like that idea of like, you want to focus on the outcome first and then reducing the noise around the platform and just getting them trained on those like key components that get you to that outcome you want to see as fast as possible. Another interesting thing we've seen, like as far as increasing the pool of people who are interested in training and are willing to pursue it, is a sort of, Connor, you've seen this too, is around aligning incentives. And maybe Connor, you want to take this, but like, this idea of how does the organization incentivize the core group of target people that they want to get trained with the right, is it a raise? Is it a bonus? Is it a badge you get within the org? Connor, maybe you've seen some of this too.
Obviously, the best incentive is financial in nature, but it doesn't have to be an overwhelming amount of money, right? If you can, as an enablement strategy in getting people to change, if there are incentives that can be small bonuses to participate in certain things, that's a huge way to get people to participate. I think the other thing too is, particularly with what you talked about, Taylor, where you might have your core training modules, you might have the lunch and learn. Like, how do you become a super user? And what does that mean from an opportunity perspective? It might be a promotion or a raise, but it also might be, hey, your job function can actually be more tailored towards the platform or tailored towards innovation and problem solving. A lot of people are inspired by mission, and there's a lot of people that want to innovate that then don't get the opportunity because they have the day-to-day task load that simply takes up all of their time. But if you can actually have that as an opportunity for people programmatically, that can be a huge win from an incentivization strategy perspective. I do think money is always a great way to motivate people, but the ability to then have a program that allows you to progress in your knowledge, certifications from a resume building perspective are great too. I know, Taylor, I think you've established like Ontologize certification in addition to maybe what Palantir offers from their program.
Recognition is really good. Respect, people are like, oh, like, acknowledging that they put in the effort is really good. Small prizes go a long way. We give out, for in-person, we give out these for the best question, not the best answer, not the smartest remark, but like the best dumb question. That's really motivating for people. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Like in the immediate moment, it's like, okay, great. Like, it's okay to ask dumb questions, but like, more to the point, it's like, hey, I'm being recognized for participating in this and engaging in this learning process together. I completely agree with everything there. Some people are doing raises. I think that today it's very different than even a year ago on that. And it's like, basically anyone who has the opportunity to learn this stuff wants to, with one exception maybe that we can go into later. There are some people who are skeptical about using the platform, especially from the dev side of the house. But once they get a taste, that kind of goes away. I would say that certifications, even if it's something you make up internally, and ours are official with Palantir, pretty difficult hands-on proctored exams to get certified there. You could have like that thing or just some printout internally. Anything on the spectrum is going to be useful for getting more people engaged with this thing. And then, like internally, as people build stuff, you can give them recognition that way. Best project of the quarter or of the year, pretty easy way of ginning up some interest. Having a hackathon internally, especially when you actually mix in other tech stacks that your organization is using. So it's not just Palantir, it's more like, hey, we're going to focus on the outcome and use a blend of technologies here that we already are familiar with, and you can bring more people into the tent, get more people exposed, that's very effective too.
Have you seen that on the government side? I'm always interested. I never worked on the public sector before. Do these paradigms actually translate from commercial to the public sector?
Um, I think there's a lot more sensitivity about like raises, and we certainly can't give out prizes on the government side. Just
Yeah.
there's, you got to be aware of all the rules there. But from a recognition perspective, you think about like letters of commendation. You think about other ways you can recognize people, and there's probably for different departments and different areas of government, there's just tried and true ways of doing that, giving recognition. And I think that, again, it just probably going to be intrinsically more mission oriented there than a lot of other places, because if you're good, you're probably taking less pay than you could get in the private sector, and getting that recognition is just going to be all the more effective, I think. These days, though, there also is the financial angle, and whether it's now or deferred, having these skills makes you a more attractive employee at a lot of organizations, even ones without Palantir, right? It's like you're bringing in the perspective on how to use and wield technology against business outcomes. It's got a very opinionated, cutting edge, what you might call applied AI suite, right? They're not making the foundation models; they're giving you the system and tools to like wield those against other problems. Those skills are laterally transferable in ways that I think are maybe superficially unintuitive, but once you get your hands dirty, it's like, okay, cool. I find this tool doesn't exist outside the platform, but like so many of the skills and concepts I need to learn to master it are immediately useful anywhere else.
Love it. One of the things I find interesting is within the context of large commercial institutions and large government institutions is the role that Foundry Champions can play. And like, I used to have to build coalitions, but like when I ran platform engineering teams, we had to build coalitions of developers who'd be willing to use what we created, right? Like, company invests all this money, we make this thing, we think it's going to make your life better. We have to find those people who are willing to try it, and then if they like it, go out and tell other developers about it, and then go, that within the context of the software company, you have to have those people. But I think within the context of these large commercial institutions, and I'll give you an example, AT&T. So we had met with Paul Burns and John Bohm over at Ranger, and they talked about their journey at AT&T and how they went from this little teeny group of people who were working in Foundry, and they would do these like monthly meetups to talk about the work they're doing. So at the end, they were like 15,000 monthly active users inside AT&T, like, and they grew that relatively organically, from this little nucleus of people. So I'm like wondering, like, do you find these champions in these orgs when you're training them? Do you like provide any tooling to help them create like meetup groups or anything like that?
Our buyers, like the people who just come to us to purchase the trainings, they'll come from a couple different personas. One is like a technical manager, maybe it's IT or data engineering. Another is the Foundry Champion, which tends to be more on the business side, but certainly not necessarily so. And occasionally it's like a higher up for like a big engagement, like some type of years long relationship, or because we have the group trainings, like some engineer or some manager at a relatively lower level. So it comes from all over. But where the champions are most commonly is more of a top-down motion. Like, oh, they correspond to the person assigned by the executive suite to manage the Palantir relationship or manage the like investment overall in this platform. I think what John was able to accomplish at AT&T is incredibly unique, like from how bottoms up it actually was. That's just a little less common. But for both these people, I think you need to really be highly repetitive with like, hey, here's why we believe this is right for us. And the challenge there is like the platform does so many things that if you take like just a slice of it, it's like, oh, well, like this part is like this other technology that maybe we have, or maybe we could just go acquire. And like this part's like this other thing over there. It's like, no, it's like, it's the totality that lets us deliver value much faster. It's the integration. And that's just a harder story to tell. So in order to manage that, either like you have to be particularly cogent at explaining that, like John is, or and usually you have to deliver results. So you have to deliver results faster than other teams not necessarily in a directly competitive way, but it's like faster than we thought we could previously. And much like the Palantir teams, like the proof is in the pudding, and that's usually how the champion wins greater support within the enterprise because they're delivering the goods.
Yeah, we see those heretical, we call them heretical thinkers, but if they can find the right use cases or the outcomes that they want to drive, then the organization has stumbled on delivery or delivering for a long period of time. If they can quantify the potential outcome and then they can deliver the solution at Palantir speed with Palantirians or other third parties or themselves, then kind of everything else, the objections associated with the platform, misconception or real are kind of melt away. And then in that way, they can start to then focus on what the program management might be to scale further. But you got to get those key wins, those business focused outcomes. Otherwise, you'll be treading water on trying to convince people to invest or scale.
Foundry. That's a good time to talk about something we got on the docket. And it's like we dance around a little bit, which is like the objections. And I often see the objections coming more from the technology side of the house than the business side of the house. I think because Palantir itself is an outcomes focused company, and I think that probably resonates more with business use the business side of the house than technology. Technology is often more focused on like architectures, risk profiles, the roadmap they have to like achieve the stack they're trying to build, and so it's a little bit more disconnected from purely business outcome focus. They're trying to be an enabler for the things the business wants to achieve usually. But that pushback that we tend to get is mostly what I find is in the more developer personas, the more code focused, code forward people in the house. And maybe they're working on like we just spent 3 years and we built a lake house that feels relatively redundant of these data engineering capabilities in Foundry, or, we have a solution that uses MuleSoft and does API gateway management. And how do we get that? This feels like a square peg trying to fit into a round hole. What are your like? I mean, we have our own opinions about developers and how to engage them, but I'd be interested to get your thoughts on like getting developers comfortable with the platform, and like how do you approach engaging them and customizing training where because their skills are super valuable in platform. Like I feel like a developer is like a force multiplier. They can do things that might take a citizen engineer much longer and it's less reusable. And you get a developer in there and you do things way faster and they can be more reusable to enable more people downstream. So I look at them as force multipliers, but I'd be interested in your thoughts on A, the pushback, like if you feel that, and then B, like what's your thoughts on like trying to maximize their value inside Foundry?
The character of the pushback that we see is mostly due to unfamiliarity and occasionally comes from a place of very well informed, strong convictions weakly held, if you will. On the unfamiliarity part, I think there's just a presumption, especially if the business already bought it and therefore they're probably using Pipeline Builder and Workshop and not the code-based tools in the platform. It's like, well, they kind of just assume that's what the rest of it's like. Just showing them is a pretty good solution there, but also talking about it in architectural terms. Like we have the simplified color by numbers architecture diagram, which is like not what you would use to build a real solution, but like it does a superb job of just in IT speak, if you will, or for any developer really, like what are the parts of this system and how do you break them down? Like for the ontology in plain English, like making it more concrete and technical, or having a better technical explanation for it. That helps people position it in their mind's eye in the context of the market. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Like here's how it's unique. And so I think counterintuitively, by pigeonholing parts of the platform, we're able to get people to understand the value of the entire thing in a much more clear-eyed way. So that makes them more willing to give it a try. And then just like very directly, some of the cool things like, oh, you got a containerized program? Cool. Just like ship it up here. It takes 5 minutes to set that up and it just runs. That's pretty great. Oh, and by the way, it integrates with everything else that your business users have already made. Showing people a couple of those is like, you get eyebrows raised. Other thing though is like, besides talking in plain English, not marketing speak, you got to acknowledge where it does fall short, right? Palantir will be the first to admit that it's like this work in progress and there's things that they wish worked better, worked differently. Until recently, no iceberg table support. Like that was a pretty glaring omission from a lot of data engineers' perspectives. You got to acknowledge that and not kind of dance around it. Likewise, from a like a cost perspective, if you have some truly commodified workflow that is not changing, you're going to probably be able to offload that to some commoditized system. Like if you just need more EC2 instances, Foundry's not a great fit for that. But if you're trying to shoehorn that in there, it's going to come off as like this expensive, overwrought system. It's like, no, you're just like using it for the wrong thing here. So I think helping people calibrate what they should be using it for lets them have a much better experience here. One more thing on the like eye candy nice feature is just the automatically generated open API docs from the SDK. It's like, oh, that's nice, right? That gets people interested in doing this sort of thing.
Great episode, right? Since you're here, you'll definitely want to check out FuturOps, a Palantir users conference coming to Dallas, Texas this October. It's 2 days jam-packed with keynote speakers, technical deep dives, tactical demos, and real-world use cases from Foundry's brightest minds. Whether you're a builder, operator, decision maker, or investor, this conference is for you. Scan the QR code to find out more.
We see a lot of companies that stumble when they get into the platform. They go, am I just lifting and shifting our perfectly tuned workflows or data pipelines into platform? That's the wrong thing to do, at least right away, right?
Yeah, if it's lift and shift, that's like the worst way of starting.
Yeah, if it's working elsewhere and you've driven the cost down to something, like you said, a commodified function, then probably best to leave that there. But like focus on the pain points of the organization where you have not solved, where there is value to be had, and then you can build really quickly. And ultimately, in a long journey, you might consider deprecating other systems, which has a value in its own right. But don't start there. This isn't just like, let's get things to look and feel like Foundry just for Foundry's sake.
Well, that also touches on like, if you're lifting and shifting, you're not changing how your organization works. You're mimicking how it works today. And no one buys Palantir because they want things to remain the same. They're buying this thing because they want to do something different. And like, you can reason backwards from that in actually very productive ways for technical teams. Like, okay, cool. Well, if we're going to do the same thing we've been doing, but over here, is that really creating value? It's like, maybe we should also, in addition to using this new platform, think about how we're approaching the problem a bit differently as well. You can do it in a more Palantir-like way. You can do it with other methodologies as well too. But like, you want to consider changing your process along with your tech stack if you're going to embrace this and have a good time.
In that vein, like the way I've tried to engage the conversation around lift and shift, because what they really want is integration of the thing they've already built. So it's like, I don't want Foundry to be an island where I can't integrate these processes and workflows that I've already built and they're running fine. Foundry is great at that, either through API integrations or like the method I kind of like is I actually like the way we're approaching is we're bringing in the same workload that we run externally, like whether it's in EC2 or Vercel or wherever. We'll actually expose those as functions via compute modules. So like we'll allow you to call these natively, and that lets me bring this whole thing under the same kind of security model within Foundry. So I don't have to like build an API integration and then deal with this problem of authorization and making sure that everything just works. So this ability to like just containerize the workload and bring it in Foundry is super powerful from that standpoint. And most of the workloads that are running are pretty lightweight and already in a container. So like you can just tell them, hey, just make it a deployment target, like add this to your deployment system. Now you have another deployment target besides EC2 that will allow you to access this in Foundry, and that can actually solve some of the issues around like, how do I make sure that the networking works and the authorization works and all this kind of stuff. But I think the integration side is super powerful for the, I won't call them legacy systems, but for the existing stuff, it's showing developers that, hey, this can be just another deployment target, just like your other stuff today. Yeah.
One conversation we have a lot on the IT side is like, we have a mainframe on-prem or in some VPC, like, can it do this? Like, actually, yeah, no problem. That's pretty common setup you got there. And then you're talking about pushing more of the cutting edge here, where the reality is the culture of these organizations bleeds into their tech stack choices and the code. And you have, a heterogeneous landscape within any organization for how business logic is encoded and where the runtimes are and where the host, all this other stuff. But there's some flavor to it that is just like built up over time and reflective of the organization's culture. And that is pretty foundational. Like the culture of an organization as expressed through tech choices is pretty foundational, and other tech systems are going to have to morph and adapt to that thing. Even SAP, I would say, like this thing that's just like, you get what you shape yourself to that. It's like, there's still some element of your own organization's culture. And so having, what was it, Foundry dev tools, right? So that you can do exactly this, have this interoperability while preserving, it's not preserving necessarily, but you are having an, like with React, you can deploy a little bit, you can move your whole app to it. It's like similar thing. You've got a glide path for, I want to stay using GitHub or whatever I'm accustomed to, I can like just go all in on Foundry. You can have this gradient of anywhere on there your dev team can choose to sit.
That's where I'm most excited, like exploring new possibility. Like we've invested heavily in that architecture of like, how do you like our approach is we want to be able to minimize the impact and disruption if we need to integrate other systems besides Foundry, or we want to swap something out from Foundry to another implementation. So we architect around that using dependency injection. I think developers can use that same pattern over and over again to help minimize, like a lot of engineers and a lot of people in IT are always concerned too about vendor lock. So I think vendor lock is an accelerator if you use it correctly, and you know what the trade-offs you're making are and what your migration path out looks like. So like the approach we took helps answer those questions up front. And then they actually get excited about the vendor lock because then they're not sitting there re-engineering. I mean, dude, if we think about it, like, do you have 10 years and $2 billion to go build Foundry? Like, do you want to do that? Or would you rather leverage an existing solution that accelerates you to the outcomes that 10-year, $2 billion investment is going to get you to? They want the acceleration. They just need like clarity on like, how do I engineer such that the vendor lock is predictable and I know what the how I would migrate my system out as a software engineer. I think those patterns are there for sure. But I think like at the end of the day, again, when I engage developers in Foundry, my goal is like, I want to position them to do the hard, heavy lifting that like a citizen engineer can't do, so that's not a dashboard in my opinion. I don't need them to build a dashboard. We've got you covered, like even a lot of the more trivial front end applications and API integrations, like Foundry is great at that. The Ontology will just natively solve for those things. But man, there are some really unique like computational workloads that developers are only capable of solving, or that it might be the reuse around some of these things. Like your point around, you reach a point in complexity where you need to make a function and you just bring everything over to the code repo at that point. Well, there's a lot of advantages around change management and using developer tooling and accelerators to now manage that code to further expand what those ontology actions can do. So like putting those developers in those key places in the stack where now they can like get better reuse, act as force multiplier, do the hard stuff that the citizen engineers can't do, then you start getting this like really cool like relationship in the team between these two groups working together, to solve problems.
And there's even completely agree. There's even a middle ground too, where it's like, so to your code thing, one of the most interesting uses of Python functions is to make UDFs for Pipeline Builder, especially IO bound ones that like you need to call some API and you want to let your no code users like call the API from within Pipeline Builder and do some processing. You just write a function for them and publish it. And now they have that expression in Pipeline Builder. And that's exactly in line with what you were talking about. There's another version, like you as a developer bringing these concepts of professional software development or professional data engineering or whatever flavor of engineering it is, and maybe you make a totally no-code Pipeline Builder template, but has better separation of concerns, has better organization here. And you can do that or, help your users refactor this behemoth of Workshop app into separate embedded modules, where you can bring these concepts into the no-code zone and still get a ton of value for your organization there. And by doing so, by having these accessible examples, you can level up your other colleagues in a show, don't tell sort of way.
Totally. I've even seen, and that's a great example, by the way, UDFs, because that is like the one that everyone was asking for initially. Like they wanted Python supported because they wanted to build UDFs, and then they wanted a way to bring them into Pipeline Builder so people could reuse them. And that's a massive accelerator and really points to how like a distributed model where you have a lot of people building could still take advantage from centralized teams that are meant to solve some really core problems. The other is like models. Like I see like teams that do nothing but build optimization problems, or they're doing things like pricing optimization, and they use Cornell models to figure out like where should I be set, run game theory and simulations to figure out, okay, what do I do, relative to my competitors. All those things can be containerized and leveraged in Python functions primarily, and now you have this rich library of new Lego blocks that become accessible inside your Workshop applications, inside your other solutions. And because you sort of have this team that their task was solving that problem correctly and then distributing it out to the rest of the the working group, that benefit you get from like good ontology design, where now it's like this Lego building block kit, and it puts the citizen engineers on rails, and they can more rapidly extract value. You've just literally like 10x the value that they can now go extract by putting these things and making them accessible through the ontology.
I think they 10x reduce the risk of scaling the platform
totally.
too.
Yeah.
I've been a part of an organization that gave low code, no code tools to the masses inside their four walls. And it was going really good for about a year and a half until there was this massive proliferation of very low quality from an engineering perspective builds. So if you actually don't inject this center of excellence or developer focused capability into the operating model or the growth trajectory of your maturity and platform, you actually are you're setting yourself up for a large risk cliff that you might fall off. So I would view it as actually a necessary add-in to your journey of scaling. Like, you want the low code, no code tools. You want business operators to be enabled, even emboldened to solve their own problems, but you need developers or some type of center of excellence that keeps the organization on guardrails such that you're not proliferating really poor practices from a data engineering or software engineering perspective.
That's firsthand experience of the built-in complexity ceiling to the low code, no code tooling. They all have it. There's a complexity ceiling that all of these things will reach eventually. So that's a great point, Connor. Like if your organization doesn't know that, if you're not like planning for that, there will be a point at which you sort of reach this asymptote and you just can't get above it, and then stuff starts falling down, And so, yeah, I think that's a great point. In this vein, this is interesting. Around this idea of like, okay, building these teams that are composed of these various personas and where they're best put. I'm interested to get your take on the American Tech Fellowship, and I think you're involved in this, right? Like, you're out there training these cohorts. Your boots on the ground. I'd love to know, A, like, how did you get involved? And then B, how's it going? And like, what do you think so far of, I think you have the first classes through and the second class is now underway. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
This shape of idea has been in the air for a few years now. I've got some threads with Sham and Ted going back to 2023 about similar shaped things. The reality is, like, I think it was one of those ideas that just had to sit with people for a while until the moment was right to release it. And then it just like came together all of a sudden, right? And it's like, over text message, cool. Here's what we want to do. Well, this slots in super well to like we can just run the training. We've got all the infra built out for ramping people onto the stack and provisioning all the learning resources. Just like click a button and it's done on our side. So we run the trainings, and the goal of the trainings is to help people rapidly ramp up from knowing some particular domain in an operational sense. Like, I'm responsible for this business unit or this like production line, or I'm a mechanical engineer who knows this domain really well. You get the point. Into, I can combine that with the ability to make AI enabled workflows, pipelines, so whatever the use case shape is. Those people are super potent because they already know the domain. They just need a little bit more push. So we do the training for that, and we coordinate the Palantir to help place them into employers, like our customers, their customers. Palantir is hired out of cohort 1, so that's the bar for anyone listening here. That the bar is as good as Palantir employees. And then cohort 2, don't have a firm date for that, but should be kicking off relatively soon. And we're taking this one step at a time. I'm going to try to draw from a broader pool of people there, refine the thesis for who's going to work out really well here. Maybe do some other variations on this. That's still TBD. But I think we're super excited. Just going to keep improving this bit by bit. And the real focus on this is, how do we help these people make a demo, make a capstone project that is realistic, can be shown off to their own companies, to if they don't have a job right now, to prospective employers, whoever it may be. But it's not exactly tracking toward get a certification, although sure they will. It's about, what are you going to produce? What are you going to build? And after the core bit of the training, there's like this branching out of everyone going these different, I'm going to make some streaming thing that does this alerting. I'm going to make some AI agent that does whatever workflow I need to do, everything under the sun.
What do you think about engaging the employers. Like, it feels like building the recruiting pipeline. This is both a problem of getting people in the door, getting the candidates, signed up and brought in, but also like that will also be directly correlated to the number of people you can bring in for the recruiting pipeline, like employers who are offering opportunities. Um, are you supposed to be responsible for that, or is Palantir driving that? Is there a role for partners to play in going out there and trying to hook up a recruiting pipeline here? So I
On
was
the
just getting curious how that's
on the
working.
fellowship in the immediate term, if you know anyone who wants to apply, it's free for applicants, right? So there's no
Yep.
charge. To be very clear, on anywhere in there. So if you know anyone, tell them to apply. Medium term, all I can say is watch this space, but I think there'll be more coming down the road there. And then on our roadmap is to probably coordinate with an existing recruiting outfit, but we have the infrastructure, we have the expertise for training people. We've got these official certification exams that, again, are very high signal. Because, sorry, a bit of a sidebar. When we were making these with Palantir, we started out making multiple choice. And then we discovered we could not craft a corpus of multiple choice questions that an LLM could not answer, right? So it's just trivial to
Wow.
have an LLM. And there's things out there, though, like, it's called invigilation software, the thing that you download to make sure you don't cheat. It's like, it's trivial to bypass that these days and just feed the screen to an LM and have it like return the answer. So we moved to the all hands on. So every Friday we spin up 70 different projects for 4 hours with like this problem set. You need to build the thing in the time allotted. And if you do, you pass. Or you don't, well, you don't pass. And so you can walk up not having done a training that we did if you have the skills, and just it's designed to respect your skills if you have them. Anyway, for American Tech Fellows, like, it's the same attitude, it's the same themes. Like, oh, we want to see what you build. And for recruiting stuff, same deal there. We have the right attitude, the right infra, the right certification exams to produce very high signal candidates to employers. And we're in talks with a couple of universities to launch a university program for this. So I think there's going to be the graduating seniors, or maybe rising juniors, rising seniors, as well as potentially some grad programs. Interest is just through the roof there, as you may imagine, especially given the job market today. And then for more mid-career folks, that's a little bit of a work in progress here. But I think that will be a separate thing that we do down the road. And that will be a very collaborative effort, I think.
We've seen. I'm at the context of universities. Postgraduates are very interesting to me because they fulfill a huge role. Connor and I have been working with a doctor at UCLA recently on a project they were building on Foundry to help the grant application process be smoother. But one of the interesting things is his grad students built the whole prototype platform, and it shows that the advanced modeling you need to be able to do, these grad students have a really good grasp on the math and how to apply the science correctly. And they have access to PhDs and subject matter experts who can correct them when they make mistakes, right? So it's a very powerful partnership if you were to think about how do you engage grad students, and grant money is a great way to do it. Like if you were to like have grad students build their work on top of Foundry to do the modeling and to do some of this stuff they're building their thesis around, and maybe the department's looking at like, oh, how does this streamline, I see how you use this tool, how can we streamline things? I find that very interesting. The other is like, and I want to get your thoughts on this one, which is I've always had this idea that like we should be recruiting out of high school for things that are not postgraduate style work, things that are like what I can train a citizen engineer to do or a job function. It feels like there's a push now to maybe rethink the traditional college recruiting pipeline as well among employers, especially in some of the people in Silicon Valley. I hear them talking about this a lot. But what are your thoughts on like, would you ever consider like a program for high school kids and like trying to build up a recruiting pipeline for first year associates or interns with Foundry certified skills that would then enter the workforce? Do you have thoughts there, how viable that might be?
Yeah, there's a lot going on here, a lot of talk. There's a lot of talk about vocational schools, traditional, about what you might call like white collar vocational schools, which is hypothetical for the most part. There's the carnage of the likes of Lambda School and all these other like coding boot camps over the past decade, some of whom who remain boutique are still doing phenomenal work, but like the ones who tried to scale with VC money really flamed out, even though on paper it looks so good. And I am a big advocate of we need a greater range of socially acceptable education paths, ranging from, hey, like my wife's a doctor. I don't believe residency can be compressed because I see the smartest people I know learning as fast as they can for like 5 years in a row. But like, could undergrad and med school be compressed instead of 8 years be smaller? Like, probably. So there's that, like the super skilled range. There's, you know, like in my high school, we were super lucky to have an amazing shop teacher who was both like great and caring with the kids, some of whom just weren't doing super well in the rest of the school, and who was also super knowledgeable at the craft, and they were able to, you know, go on to jobs. Maybe they didn't go to college. And there's like a lot of stuff missing in the middle, which is kind of what we're feeling out here, what Palantir's embracing with their hiring of kids who didn't necessarily go to college or maybe dropped out midway through or something like that. The reality is like, there's so much other stuff for us to do right now that we have to respond to what the market wants when it comes to recruiting and placing. And we're not seeing a lot of forward leaning organizations there. I think the other thing is just very realistically, it's an employer's market right now in many, many spaces. Not every space, of course. I think like skilled technical labor, like standing up data centers, that is super short supply. But for a lot of things that's like, you might use Foundry for, it's just, there's a lot of liquidity in people who are already in their careers or out of college. So I just think the demand is not going to materialize right now.
I'm pretty shocked that, well, coming from a lifelong career of consulting, that more consultants and white collar workers aren't selectively seeking out where there's major opportunity. Now, I might be in a small echo chamber here of people that either follow Palantir, work with Palantir, started a company around Palantir. But man, if you just looked at the market cap and the growth of Palantir, it feels like a pretty strong signal that you might want to get involved with it. So if you are an accountant or you're an FP&A analyst or you run a procurement function, picking up this type of technology, learning it, hiring you to be brought in to train that person and then their team feels like a pretty good way to make sure that you insulate yourself from the potential potential disruption of your job function or your day-to-day work. Because like you said, it's an employer's marketplace right now. There is a lot of sentiment, at least, if not outright anxiety, that jobs are potentially going away or under threats, or there's a shrinkage of potential opportunity, at least. So this would be a good avenue for people to pick up, maybe not out of college or like you're saying, but that you have a current existing job function that you're doing or running.
It's only in the past couple of years that Palantir has really embraced the Palantir for startups from a marketing perspective. It's existed for a little while longer, but that's still like not an individual, not like Connor, the whatever at an existing employer, right? So I think there's just it's not what a lot of the messaging, if you're not already familiar, based on what you see about the company, would you assume is something you could walk up and work on? Like if you're a developer, you're probably aware of the developer tier, sure. But if you're like someone who's not that, who would be a citizen developer, would be a power user elsewhere, I don't think there's a lot of messaging that is really directed at them today. And so I don't think there's going to be a lot of organic discovery by them. It's a good point though. Like this is the flavor of skill that I think you should be picking up. And my hunch is that there's going to be people who use like chatbot style things in their day-to-day work and want to graduate from that. If anyone's listening, like even before you get to a Palantir shaped thing, which again, I think is, what is it? AIP.palantir.com will get you on the track to sign up for a dev tier thing. And there's a couple other tabs there.
Build.palantir.com.
Build.palantir.com.
Yep.
I think all roads lead to Rome here, but build.palantir.com. Put that in the show notes. So if you're not even there, whether it's Windows or Mac, have the chatbot tell you how to run a shell command. Be different on different platforms. And then, if you need to rename a bunch of files in bulk, or you need to process some images, or like whatever you need to do, reorganize stuff, like try to have it write you commands to interface with your computer and do the same things you would do with a mouse, but through the command line interface, which is just a text-based interface for doing all the normal stuff you do with your computer, but in the old school, more programmatic way. That as a way of evolving from getting answers from the chatbot to writing code, you can put that in air quotes if you want, to like running that code in these bite-sized steps. You don't have to think about a whole program, don't even have to think about a whole function. You get immediate results, like you can save yourself time by automating tasks. Like, I think that's a pretty good on-ramp. The other one is like, there's a lot of like, whether it's Replit or Lovable or whatever, in your browser, you don't need to worry about your environment setup. You don't need to worry about any fussiness on your local machine. You can just run it in the cloud like that, and you can make stuff that way. The tough thing, though, is like without a thing like Palantir, you can't really do that at work, right? Because like you either be exfiltrating data or running it in this environment you don't actually have any control over. You don't know what the security is, blah, blah, blah. If you can go from that to a Palantir type thing, well, like if your organization has it, you're in luck because you can just like do whatever you need to do there. The models have already been sanctioned by the higher ups.
So if we think about the journey for you and Ontologize, like when you started, I mean, there's so much demand to get, there still is, like, I mean, the demand's going through the roof to train people. I think it was like, you guys had pretty immediate success, but if you could talk a little bit about like the journey from going from this idea, like we need a training partner, right? Like there's got to be someone in the world that is dedicated to this. And then how that's evolved over time. And as you think, I mean, it sounds like there could be a lot of things potentially on the roadmap for you as you think, as the market evolves around this, because the market's super dynamic and changing a lot as well. But like, what's the journey been like from founding to now? And like, what's on the roadmap right now as you look out over the next like 2 to 3 years?
Actually, like before Palantir, I was basically a teacher. And so you can kind of see how those two things result in what we have today in Ontologize. But I thought for a long time, like, dude, I want to build something that, was a consultancy, like built data pipelines, built AIP wasn't a thing then, but, built things just like I did at Palantir. Did I want to do something different? And I eventually realized like, hey, I would love a job where I can teach. And that's how it was. And so for the first 9 months, it was just me recording very high quality, pedagogically high quality, and then increasingly production quality, high quality videos in this back room in my house. I had to get a stack. This is before Foundry for Builders or Palantir for Startups. So I just had to figure out how to get a stack at that point. Then I had some early customers and it's like, oh, wow, there's a real business here. It's not just like me. I'm going to go hire some people and hired others who think like me. It's like, we're really good engineers who also like to teach. We all make teaching our main job and just push the bar. What does it mean to like do an enterprise training? It's like, they all kind of suck. Can we make it fun and better? Also just take pride in our work and kind of just set a new standard for this. And that was the thrust. And then the engineering side, we've had to build a lot of infra to just make these trainings work correctly and not leak any customer information and have it be efficient. And of course we've used Palantir for that automation. What we've realized is hey, there's a lot of private stuff that we can't touch, like recording for, CodeStrap, right? We're not going to do anything with that data, but there's a lot of public content we're making here. That is very interesting from the perspective of, okay, we're going to have the self-serve learning portal, but also augmenting the docs with that, augmenting the community stuff with that, because we just continue to make hundreds of hours of video teaching Foundry on the screen every month. There's going to be a product here that we expose either through the self-serve portal. I'm going to say we can make a better AIP Assist helper because we just have more data, actually.
Yes, God, please. I've not been super happy with the AIP Assist,
we're going to do it. I think it's a data problem, and we're going to have
Agreed.
more. And right now it's but then it's going to be use case templates and all this other stuff. But then imagine having access to that Ontologize portal.
While you're at it, rewrite the documentation too.
Watch this space. Watch this space, like you say.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
But imagine having that via MCP. So you're in Cursor, and you get, you got the Palantir MCP thing, but you can just plug in ours to your docs, and it's going to really supercharge what you're able to do. You don't even need to come to our interface. I think that's what's pretty intriguing to me. So just from a business perspective, I think about okay, great. And by the way, there's going to be a free tier, of course. It's going to be the world's best intro to Palantir course, Foundry and AIP. That's the carrot. But for all the other stuff, whether it's weekly live streams or trainings or more modular self, like you can just opt into workshop 301 if you want the advanced thing, things like that. There's a feedback loop here of just making the model better at using Palantir and giving more people access to that thing, whether it's technical developers or non-technical users or people who are shaping use case like, oh, how should this interface with my DB2 instance on-prem, etc. Cool. Like here's a well-informed thing there. And relatedly, I think where we're going is we're going to do a survey of platform administrators across the Palantir ecosystem. Nothing super fancy here, but like you want access to your peers in an anonymized way that give like detailed and quantifiable or qualitative details about how they're using this thing. It's just like, oh, give me a spectrum of how centralized to federated they are and put me on that spectrum. Cool, I'm here. Great, good to know, right? So I think bring the community together on the technical side is also another direction that we'll go. We have Maven. We have unclassed Maven. We're going to get Foundry Edge. I've seen one of those boxes. I don't know if you guys have seen one of the boxes. They're super cool. And I think the other thing for us is just like expanding to the entire suite of Palantir products. So Apollo, Foundry Edge, Maven is, we have it tracking, do some trainings on that, but just like if you need anything, not just Foundry and AIP, then we'll have that.
Great episode, right? Since you're here, you'll definitely want to check out FuturOps, a Palantir users conference coming to Dallas, Texas this October. It's 2 days jam-packed with keynote speakers, technical deep dives, tactical demos, and real-world use cases from Foundry's brightest minds. Whether you're a builder, operator, decision maker, or investor, this conference is for you. Scan the QR code to find out more.
I remember we spoke at AIP Con, it's either AIP Con or DevCon at dinner, and you were telling me about you were building specialized environments so that you could test drive things like HyperAuto, like by having access to SAP stacks. Are you still like investing in some of these environments so you can test drive all features of Foundry?
Yeah. SAP remains a bit of a white whale. Also because it requires like a lot of investment just to set up on our side. So putting that one aside though, like if we do training, it's like real, you're going to integrate from a real S3 bucket, whether it's your iceberg table or some media or whatever, and a real Snowflake and real API. We have fun with the APIs as like college football APIs, or for international customers, it's different ones. But honestly, those three, I anticipate having to do a lot more systems, but those three cover the conceptual basis for basically 90% of everyone. It's like, oh, it's an ODBC, JDBC driver-based connector with or without virtual tables. It's blob storage in whatever hyperscaler, and it's a REST API. A lot of the others are just variations on a theme there. But on the like automation side, the thing that I find very encouraging is the rate at which new public APIs are being released. And the thing that I find constraining is like they still don't have the ones that we need. So we've had to reach back into our memories and like access private APIs, but couple that with durable rollback workflow orchestration. Because if we deploy something that is like, something that could go wrong because it's just like a multi-step platform administration automation, we need to be able to roll it back. And like that's functionality we've had to build internally, which is I think thematically similar to what you're talking about for testing this sort of stuff.
Yeah, just having like the most robust testing environment, because like a lot of times if you just go to build.palantir.com, you're in an isolated stack. There's nothing hooked up to it. Like that's interesting, but you're going to be spending a lot of time learning how to integrate all those things before you really get into an environment that will let you test a lot of the really interesting functionality. So like stepping into training an environment that simulates kind of a typical enterprise without having to go do all of that work, which by the way, a lot of people can't do. Like a lot of software engineers they wouldn't know how to go. And especially if they're junior, and then certainly citizen engineers aren't going to know how to go stand up all these stacks, get the networking right, get all the the egress policies in place and everything. It's like walking into those environments, to me, that sounded super valuable.
It could be good for us to like, it wouldn't be appropriate for the intro to Palantir course in the portal, like the free thing, but like maybe in the same tier, platform admin in 1 hour. Here's like the 80-20 rule, like the basic things you need to know, and you won't really mess anything up if you check these settings.
Love it.
That would probably be pretty good, right?
Be really good. especially because like to get through that 1 hour, if you didn't have a stack like that, you're spending several days to weeks like
Yeah,
getting all that.
it's the uncertainty. Like it's on the screen. It's like maybe not that complicated, but like, should I do this or should I do that? What are the second order implications of this thing? It's like, nope, like 90% of you want this setup, and then you'll modify it over time.
You mentioned something in there that slipped through, but I think I caught it, which was like you're creating your own AIP Assist. I don't know if people know, but you can create your own AIP Assist in Agent Studio. So you can sit down in Agent Studio, you can decide up front, like, do you want this to be a typical chat thing, or is it going to be an AIP Assist chat agent? Mm-hmm. Are you building your own AIP Assist agents with Agent Studio and then delivering them through Marketplace? Is that the intention?
Yeah, I mean, like there's more of a vision. We don't have concrete plans to do this. I think the direction I see it going, though, like where we're at with what models can do in general today and where we're at Ontologize is like, oh, interesting. We have a much more unique data asset than I had anticipated, and it's growing every day. And unlike a customer or unlike Palantir, our data is totally notional. Like we have very realistic domain specific notional data, but therefore it's like there's no chance of leaking anything, right? So when we make a video teaching you how to do this thing or whatever, we can pass it through our pipeline, extract all the interesting questions, process a video. Also on our maintenance side, know what features were shown in the video, so when they change, we can like know what part of our content needs updating, right? Because the long tail maintenance thing. So all this stuff, and I think whatever the delivery form takes, and who knows, AIP agents may change by the time we're ready for this. Like that's a direction I see us going in. And I think there's another version of, like you mentioned, AT&T. They have, I forget what it's, Ask AT&T. They have some company-wide chatbot agent. Just plugging this sort of stuff into that, and that offers an interesting blend of, oh, actually maybe there is proprietary training information in there, because we're going to blend the Ontologize corpus with the Ontologize trainings for fill-in-the-blank customer. You get the best of both worlds there, and then there's a version of, well, we've got our portal where it's on track to go, is like, we have our learning paths, we have our courses, all that's good, but like you can type in what your job is, what you need to accomplish, what your skills are, and it will on the fly make a learning path for you from like these 7 minutes of this video to like this other thing. Totally feasible these days. Exposing that internally, it's like, oh, you've got your own internal Palantir course you may want to make about your data and your workflows and your IT regulations. Like just use this thing, which offers an amazing experience, and automatically plugs into AIP Assist, just takes care of that for you, right? So you can expose your stuff through whatever chatbot you want. I think there's going to be a very interesting product offering down the road, but that's not in the short-term roadmap for us yet.
Well, it's an interesting pattern too, that like you've captured all this information for your product or your training curriculum and the delivery of that curriculum. And now you have a data asset out the other side that's high quality. I think a lot of companies could learn that lesson, that if they start to capture more and more of their data in whatever domain it is, including the unstructured data, the communication, the meetings, or the delivery through voice of anything, that it can become a data product for them to get value out of. And then if they follow your pattern where you're using third-party data from either Palantir's docs or whatever it is, that you can augment your knowledge base with basically gasoline to go faster, to get faster, more enriched answers to questions. I can see the applicability in like every single business function, particularly getting junior resources up the curve in how to be more value add. Context
seems to be the hot thing of the day, and I think it's hot for a reason.
One of the reasons we chose Palantir to build our agents was model grounding's hard, and it's not just like a little bit hard, it's a lot hard. And as it turns out, the best way to get a high value answer to a high value question is give the model the exact right context to answer it, right? Yep. And so a lot of us, that's what we're doing now. And you're really well positioned because you can decide what you expose publicly. Like, for example, Google now offers, as part of the Gemini platform, internet search for model grounding. So like you can, things like $35 per 1,000 requests, and you can use Google Search Index. But it'll also give you the page contents. Like for me to do this now, I have to use a scraper like Firecrawl. Mm-hmm. If I want to use, like I may use a Google search engine that I wrote that can restrict results to specific websites and duration, like timeframes. but I can't get the page text of that. Google won't give it to me. They'll give me a summary, but like in order to ground the model, I need the full text. I'll have to go out and scrape it. What's interesting about your data asset is you have full control over not only all of the content, but you also have full control over what you release publicly and what you release privately, which is a moat to prevent people like Google from actually being able to access it, or OpenAI or whoever. And then I think the other interesting part of that is like Foundry, and we should talk a little bit after this, it's just like Marketplace, but Foundry gives you some very powerful ways to distribute your applications, whether that's a data asset or an agent that's able to access it or trained against it. That flexibility in how you deliver the solution is really cool, because then you can like integrate with people if you're meeting them inside Foundry versus if you're meeting them inside Ask AT&T.
One thing I have been wondering about, but have not heard a lot of conversation about, is curation. Let's imagine, put Palantir aside for a sec just to make a cleaner example. You want to be a data engineer. You probably want a chatbot learning assistant thing that doesn't have the entire internet, but has like the top 25 data engineering blogs, Databricks' docs and tutorials, Snowflake's docs and tutorials, probably some news outlets, so you have a sense of like what changed over time, and that's it. And like it can't reach out to other stuff, and then you've got less stuff, but a higher signal to noise ratio. And I don't quite know where the chips will fall in this one, but I think there is something to curation alongside context. And at the maximalist version is the ontology. You're ground the model in the data that's in the database, if you will. But I think there's like one step beyond that where it's going to be dynamic, it's going to be on the fly, but it's going to be like legible as to what the boundaries of the curated bubble are. And therefore, you're going to have higher confidence in the results, and it's going to probably struggle less to get you good median quality of whatever you're engaging it with for.
The way we're doing that is we moved away from OpenAI's web search capabilities, and we don't use Google's built-in Gemini grounding process. We actually went to Google's search engine API. So for anything that is on a public pathway that we want curated in our result sets, we actually have custom search engines we wrote that restrict particular domains. A good example of that is our AI coding tools are only allowed, like like we have an AI coder for integration of Google services, but it's only allowed to look at the Node SDK documentation for TypeScript, with the TypeScript implementation for those answers. We don't allow it to go search a bunch of other docs that are useless. And like to your point, signal to noise ratio much better. And we can even do things like restrict it to particular timeframes, durations, or particular timeframes, et cetera. Google search gives you some great, but it doesn't help you on the private side. And I really feel like on the private side, like if we think about something like the Ask AT&T, I think corporate America has a long way to go to provide a good search engine, and like the ontology could be the thing that actually unlocks that, in my opinion, because like what the ontology gives you are two really good search mechanisms as an abstraction for free. You've got fuzzy matching and full text indexes that are provided natively in it. So you don't have to go stand up Elasticsearch and like bring all that data in there and build separate indexes. And it also gives you vector search as if you want to build a semantic engine. So if you just take just those two things alone and the ontology's ability to ingest all of this data, I'm wondering at what point do the enterprises figure out that like just to power their own internal use cases for information retrieval, the key to the value unlock is a better search engine, and the key to a better search engine is better information retrieval. And right now they suck at it, and they have to figure out a better way to do it.
Well, most large enterprises have invested a lot of money trying to get an enterprise-wide chat interface.
It always falls down on its inability to ingest all of the data. So like you get this, you'll get some slice of data asset that might be relevant, but then it also falls down in its ability to recall and find the relevant data based on what you're doing. And part of the reason it's failing to do that, it doesn't have enough information about you, So part of what's relevant in context is like your job function, what you've been searching, what questions you've been asking in text and chat lately, like all these other things that provide additional context layers around search. And to my knowledge, like Foundry is the only data platform I would trust to bring all of that information together to build a better search engine. And by the way, Google knows this about you, by the way. So like when you go do a search in Google and you're a Google user, it does have all this context about you, what sites you visit, what you've been talking about, where you've been posting, what you've clicked on. That's how they're able to get so contextually relevant in the answers that are most relevant to you. So this problem has to be solved.
I think the curation things freaking reduce the window of information that might be retrieved. Because right now these enterprise-wide chat interfaces, Ask AT&T, I don't know about that one specifically. It could be
No, I don't either. I don't have any knowledge about the quality either. I'm not making statements.
You can watch the AIP Con 5 or 6, and AT&T talked about it if you want to know more. But this is really hard to do when you just say, we're going to give this chat interface, this chat capability to a large organization. You could have tens of thousands of people that each want to retrieve very different information. You try and release it to be a one-size-fits-all, it's probably not going to work. Or it's going to work at such a varying degree that people will go immediately, right? Form factor at the beginning really matters. If it's wrong a lot at the beginning and people notice that, they're going to abandon it or not use it, which could bode very poorly for the people that were responsible for the investment to stand it up.
Well, I think the good point here is around the surface area of search, just how big it is. Like, and when you think what makes Google so good at it, it's like, well, it has all the data. I mean, all of the data. It's got the entire internet. It's got private sources in Google Books. It's got everything Google's tracked internally. It's got the entire user profile of you that it uses to figure out what you most likely are talking about. It's got the Google Knowledge Graph that has something like over 17 billion entities in it, right? Like they've invested in a massive data asset. And to get a quality result that would be on par with the information retrieval you can do in Google against public sources, against your own internal private sources, you're now talking about this like massive surface area, which includes, in my opinion, like private data assets like the one Taylor's building, right? Like, and so to me, it speaks to a couple of different things, which is like, one, you need a very powerful data integration and retrieval system that could actually be safely like bring in all these things. But the other is like being able to incorporate additional data assets like what Taylor's creating, maybe through something like Marketplace, would be a great way to extend that capability, because the enterprise isn't going to want to solve every issue related to information retrieval against every data asset in the world. That would be pretty rough. But they might want to buy it. You know, they might want to go out there and be like, oh, this person's acquired this ability to now search and retrieve from this high value data asset. They can then answer a cohort of my Ask AT&T user questions much, much better. Maybe they start augmenting that capability with a bunch of other private data assets around this. To me, Foundry Marketplace feels like that's an incredible opportunity when you look at it in the context of information retrieval outside of just normal application development.
Yeah, it's a good circle. So I don't think there's going to be a single search interface at most organizations that will work, but Marketplace is a good thing to bring up, because like you could imagine having these agent-able search capabilities that are able to communicate to each other behind the scenes for the user, right? And so you could have a Marketplace bootstrap, not production mode product here that's like, cool, do you want your search tool for operations, for finance, for whatever, and you're going to tweak it to match what the users are expecting. Maybe you're going to like stick it into another app, either iframe it in, or maybe you write some OSDK version of it. Just go to where the users already are, and you let it integrate with some central repository of other search agents. But then like it's that dev team, it's that part of the organization that knows the context, and they can like reliably get comprehensive coverage of that, but they're not going to be able to get comprehensive coverage of the entire organization. So the question we got from a technical team on a training recently was like, hey, like, should we be using bootstrap mode deployment of Marketplace products? Which if anyone listening hasn't seen this, like production is like more of a SaaS product shaped thing. Like you're going to push updates to your users. They're going to take them. They don't really need to think about this thing at all. And bootstrap is like more in the control of whoever did the installation. And you can like choose to take updates. You can customize, you can tweak. It's more of a starter kit in a lot of ways. And like, what should we use bootstrap deployment? It's like, this very good technical team didn't know about this thing, even though they were using Marketplace, using DevOps. That's a interesting dot there. And B, I think that as an accelerant for in-house development, the Marketplace bootstrap deployments are going to be pretty key. We're going to see a flourishing of starter kits, if you will. And the production stuff will be for more end user customer offerings that you either maintain or just ship to them, and it will be more of a SaaS offering shape thing.
Yeah, there's massive applicability for Marketplace for consultants as well. Large consulting institutions really like repeatability, and they want to with customization, be able to start really quickly, have an accelerator that gets them if they're analyzing tariffs or if they are assessing a component of a consumer company in a due diligence setting. They want the repeat asset to be deployed and then obviously customized. Now, again, you're right. If it's in bootstrap mode, maybe you don't have the feedback loop to continuously improve that even within the consultant's walls or consultancy's walls. But so what? If you have an ability to, or if you have a list of problem statements that you're potentially going to address more than once at different clients, you can build assets that incorporate data pipelines, your ontology, your applications, your investigation tools that you might use like Contour, package those up and redeploy them again and again. There's massive utility in that. So it applies obviously to enterprise companies, but also consultants could have a field day with this capability.
I mean, my hope one day is we can have sector and subsector open source foundational ontologies that define the shape of the problem space for specific areas. And Connor's like hinting at some of the ones that exist in consultancies right now. There are parts of consultancies that do have a common modeling system. And then the work of the team is to get the source inputs to match up to the expected format of the internal pipeline and then make sure the data is clean. But once it's hooked up, the modeling's all the same. In fact, they put tight controls around everything, north of the data ingest so that no one can modify the modeling except for like subject matter experts with inside that organization. So one day I hope to see like foundational ontologies. But outside of Marketplace being used for these aspects, like, do you see yourself becoming a platform where like people like us could, build and publish to Ontologize's systems like the CodeStrap, University for Foundry Developer Foundations or something like that? Do you see yourself taking advantage of it to become your own platform?
There's a couple things that we need to resume doing that we once did, like have a directory of freelancers who do Palantir work and smaller organizations for hire, just like making that a bit more fully fleshed out than the partnerships page on Palantir. I mean, so the freelancers will never be partnerships. So it's like platform shaped. I think in terms of the marketplace stuff, the logistics of having a remote store are still, you need to file a ticket with Palantir as the person who would be installing it onto your stack to get access. And that's a little cumbersome. I would like probably by the end of the year to have a couple Ontologize free learning resources packaged up into the dev tier. That's just like, you can install it if you want to, but that's like a special case, that's not by default, this is available elsewhere. We'll have to see. Like for the portal and other things, we offer SSO for no additional charge by default. And I think some customers looking ahead, they like the fact that we host trainings on our stack because they don't have to manage any of the costs. They don't have to manage any of the messiness. And some want their users to self-deploy our resources into their stack. And I think the lessons we're going to learn from managing that at scale will probably pretty quickly push us to have the most marketplace customers of anyone, realistically, just because due to the funny shape of our business, we're going to have the most customers of anyone because, we don't go and do the consulting work. We train a lot of people and the training is pretty widespread demand. So yeah, I don't know. I think like there's definitely a need for this. The other thing is we don't have domain expertise. Like I don't know supply chain. I don't really know defense. I don't know fill in the blank. And so we're not competitive with anyone there. So maybe that's like in our role as Switzerland of the ecosystem in a lot of ways, could we help produce this, especially if you're already coming here to learn from these resources, you want to deploy this other stuff? I certainly anticipate us being an easy go-to place for fill-in-the-blank consultancy that has a service offering that wants to go to developers or technical managers with some type of, hey, we'll show you how to use this, how to install this one thing properly, just getting eyeballs on it and that being a funnel to them. I think that could be something just because YouTube is already working for us for that today and other things like that.
You'd also have the people to be able to evaluate the artifacts and the solution. So like trust would be a big one, assurance, as far as becoming, yeah, exactly. So you could come
That's
in there
tricky. That's so tricky from an incentive perspective. Like I don't want to become a Gartner or a Dresner or whatever, right? A pay to play type of thing or a G2. And I have not, I'm open to suggestions. I have not figured out how to do that in a way that is not actually low signal and just checking the box. And unless we could figure that out, I don't think we'll be able to go there.
Another thing I just wanted to bring up real quickly, because I got the chance to see this in person, and it's in line with Marketplace. But I got you here, so I'm going to ask you. We held this DevCon in Denver a little while back, and you sent one of the people there, and they demoed your registration system. And it's really cool because like users go on your site, they can sign up and get registered in Foundry, and now they can like log into the Foundry stacks via your public registration system. I know a bunch of devs have been asking me about this forever. Like, how do I do that? Like, I want to be able to automatically take in the signups from my portal, my front end portal, maybe it's in Vercel, but then register those people as users in Foundry. And Foundry did a great job of like documenting the user API with everything except add user.
Oh man, this is so simple. Okay, so if you're looking at the APIs, you're barking at the wrong tree.
Okay.
So just get that out of the way. You don't need APIs for this.
Okay.
You do need some actions and functions here.
Internally we use Microsoft Entra for everything for our IDP. Certainly, that's how my user accesses Foundry. That's how I also have like 40 other users because it's one user per training because it's one org per anyway. InfoSec, right? But for the portal, like Dorian, if you were to onboard as a user, what would happen? Okay, well, you'd sign up, and then we use Propel Auth. If you haven't heard of them, I do recommend them. Great dev experience. But if you've heard of Auth0, think of them like Auth0, right? So that's our identity provider for the portal and other things. Like we have a private chat room, like using open source Rocket Chat. Oh, it hooks into that too. So that's the identity provider for authentication for all of our end user facing stuff, including Foundry. It was as simple as setting up an OIDC auth provider in Foundry. That's it for like the actual wiring up of this thing. Now, the SCIM-like mechanics that we have, those rely on some APIs, right? But for the basic setup, it's just an OIDC authentication provider. I think in line with this, though, what you want to do is make sure your organization mapping rules for users and groups are correct. You also want to automate to the degree possible your org configuration, org permissions, all this other stuff. So if that means automating the provisioning of internal groups through your own internal identity provider, like as the admin for this thing, you have to do that. I recommend like actually offloading that to your other identity provider for your other users, and using whatever organization or tenant mechanics they have over there to isolate those things. But downstream of all that is like, oh, I want to spin up a project for Dorian, give him these permissions, not those permissions. Like we don't let you make streams by default. We don't let you make live at model deployments. When we do those lessons, we all do it in a centralized folder, so it's easy for our bots to go in and clean up so there's not wasted resources. But for your default folder, you have like most of the basic stuff. And that is not that dissimilar than a large enterprise with like conceivably different identity providers in different countries, potentially, if it's actually a federation of all these other companies, or if you have end users in your SaaS application or things like that. Maybe we should just make a YouTube video. It really is like the core is super standard and not that hard to set up. Downstream of that, what you want to automatically do is kind of up to you.
I would love to see it where it's like, you onboard someone in Workday, like for the large enterprises, and that automation kicks in, so that, because if you've done the mapping with your identity provider and your roles and groups are all mapped, as soon as you onboard someone in the HR system, you should be able to then run a script that would then onboard them into your identity provider with the right roles and permissions. And then that would just translate into the right groups in Foundry. Because like Connor, you were our admin before, and I remember how hard you were working trying to manage this internally. And a lot of, dude, you'd be surprised how many big institutions are still kind of in that boat. They don't have any kind of automated role and group assignment and provisioning of a workplace or anything like that in Foundry. You're just
maybe this is our next DevCon talk, like authentication,
please.
Authentication, not authorization in Foundry using a third-party IDP plus downstream scripting. The hard part for anyone so I think the hard part that is probably going to be hit by more people is, again, I'm trying to focus on what the core thing is. Let's imagine that you have an admin panel in Workshop for managing these users, which if you've got Workday, you should not do. You should go to Workday for that. But if you have one for your app, Well, then you start to get into these slightly tricky, which I know you've done tracing, Dorian, that will help with this, but bidirectional synchronization between your ontology and the identity provider. And like this is one where like you actually need low latency writes because it's going to be sensitive information there, like revoking access, things like that. But also, if that fails, but your ontology write succeeds, now it's out of sync, right? And so recommended approach is like write directly to the other system and have that system rely on a webhook to call an action via API and write it to the ontology. That has proven a much more resilient, reliable setup for this particular use case.
All right, today we covered the state of Palantir trained resources, how to build an upskilled workforce, including bringing Ontologize to help on that journey, different cohorts and personas of individuals who are approaching the platform, learning and scaling up. The American Tech Fellowship, some interesting things about Marketplace, and certain things coming from Ontologize and Palantir. Taylor, where can people find you and engage Ontologize?
Easiest is probably just to find me on LinkedIn. And if you're interested in training, there's also ontologize.com.
Excellent. Well, guys, future episodes coming, more and more guests of partners, customers, content creators, Palantir, other tech companies, you name it. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.